Alright, so I'm gonna go ahead and lie horribly to you. Wait, no, that's not quite right. I'm supposed to say, right. I'm gonna be honest with you about this. I'm kidding. This is one of the weirdest assessments, and ruminations too, that I've ever done. See, one of the things I do, and I know I'm not alone in this, is I tend to go ahead and peruse the reviews and the gameplay views, that kind of a thing, and to see people's thoughts on a game, usually pretty much right after it comes out, at least if it's a game I care about or it's on my radar, as we like to put it. Now, if I do this, I generally don't actually take whatever they say as writ. In fact, usually I either... to put it simply, I don't want to say I disagree with the critics, but most of the time what they say is irrelevant. It is how they say it that matters. I tend to look at how they focus on what they focus on, how they phrase their sentences, the usage of language, any kind of reiterations in their review. There's all sorts of things you can analyze in these reviews to figure out whether or not you, or that is to say me, actually enjoys a game. So I don't want to go down a list, but suffice it to say that when Watch Dogs was coming out, all the reviews I saw, everything I saw was, yeah, this looks pretty good. This looks like a game that I will enjoy, and I will pick up on sale. I'll talk about the sale thing a little bit more in the rumination, because there's another thing to add on here. But regardless, when I pulled up this game and fired it up and started going through the first mission, my expectation was to really enjoy myself. The more astute of you who follow my Twitter may or may not remember and be already putting two and two together here about a tweet I put out last week. Yes, that was about this game. Here's the thing, though, before you all tar and feather me, especially the gentleman who donated the game and asked for the rumination, Watch Dogs is not a bad game. It's more complicated than that. But if you asked me, if you put a gun to my head and said, Arshian Gaia, what do you think about this game? I would say it's average. This is the most average, normal, mundane, boring, ordinary, uninteresting game I've played in a very long time. It is not bad. It has bad elements, but every game does. It has good elements, but most games do. But overall, it's just this big old gray. Like on the negative 10 to 10 scale, this would be right smack dab 0. Here's the thing. I can't... okay, so one of the reasons for this whole assessment thing, one of the 3 reasons, is to kind of serve as a recommendation, right? Do I think this game is worth it? And usually, how and with what provisos I feel it's worth it. I mean, there's a reason there was that whole what to pay thing that I started with. This is how much I think a game is worth. So normally if there's a game like this, like, say Dragon Age 2, I'd say, buy it on sale. It was fun to play through and just pick it up on sale. Or if it's a niche game, something that you may or may not be interested in, I mention why I found it interesting, and here's the pluses and minuses, and buy it on sale or whatever. Watch Dogs isn't quite the same, because Watch Dogs has a huge, nigh unsurmountable problem. It's long, really long, and you combine what I mentioned earlier about this kind of being an uninteresting average game, and then you add the length, you start to see the problem here. Most people tend to forget about this. We think of games in terms of monetary budget, but people who have been gamers for many years, myself included, also have a time budget, because we have family, we have friends, we have work or job or both. We have chores and errands and basic maintenance and upkeep we have to do. We have all this crap that takes up time in our lives. So we have to be very careful with the time that's left. That time is precious and not to be wasted. I've heard this argument as one of the reasons why many people don't get into MMOs, because MMOs are such a colossal time sink that it basically becomes the only thing they can do that's not already allocated. And that makes perfect sense to me. Watch Dogs is really, really long. And for that reason alone, I can't fully bring myself to recommend it, because the recommendation would be like something along the lines of, if you can get it on sale, or if you have the money to burn, and if you have tons of time to play it, and if you happen to enjoy the type of gameplay, then if all these things are true, too many ifs, it's a very iffy recommendation. So take that or leave it. Now, of course, as always, I want to mention, the gameplay aspect, which you probably already know about. But I'm going to summarize it super simple, okay? Take most of the bad aspects of Assassin's Creed and most of the bad aspects of Grand Theft Auto and merge them together into this big old mess, and that is the gameplay. There are good elements, don't mistake me, but that is the overall. If you enjoy that sort of Grand Theft Auto-y, Saints Row-y, Just Cause-y, whatever, sandbox type of gameplay where you get in vehicles and drive around and shoot things, and if you enjoy the pseudo-parkour, pseudo-melee takedown, stealth action-y kind of thing, which actually is a little more Far Cry than Assassin's Creed now that I think about it, but whatever, then that's the kind of gameplay. I will talk about this in more detail in the rumination, of course, but that's the summary. There is one last thing that needs to be mentioned here in the assessment, though, and that's the fact that when I mentioned I was so disinterested in the game, all I've talked about is the gameplay. I have no nice way to say this. I was completely uninvested in the story. I would argue the game itself was completely uninvested in the story. It was more like a sequence of events happening so that we can get from set piece to set piece and have the gameplay. Like, the major focus of the entire game was on the gameplay. And I think there's probably a reason for that. I'll talk about that pretty much at the end of my rumination. But suffice it to say, if you're the kind of person like myself, who really loves a good characterization, who really loves a good plot, who really loves a good setting, this is not the place for that. However, there are some good points to the story. Two characters come to mind immediately. And there are a few interesting points about the setting, all of which are borrowed from Assassin's Creed. Take it or leave it, basically. This is like I said, this is just the weirdest assessment I've ever done, because I can't actually recommend this game for real. So, now you're probably expecting me to do some big hacker, kind of joke here. And I thought about that. But I'm an old school kind of guy, so we're going to be nice and analog here and just get this big old switch and see you in the rumination.